Today I was just going to give you a bit of a background on me, what I used to do exercise-wise, and the symptoms I started getting in my legs and hips, and just the progression of those, and then up to having surgery. So I'm a distance runner. I started running when I was 11. Previous to that, I've been a horse rider since I think 4 I started horse riding, and I did that. I had a horse from age 11 to 17, so I was really heavily involved in that in my childhood. And then I started running at age 11, just naturally had good endurance, rubbish at sprinting. So I started doing like 800s and 1500s and school cross country and just going for runs on my own. I did that all through high school. I did it a bit with school, and I joined an athletics club as well. And then when I was 16, I started doing triathlon, and did that quite heavily, age 16 to 18. I then went to South Africa to go and do nature conservation. It was initially just this 1 month, kind of like a gap year program. So on a game reserve, and it was really cool. I had a really great time. I didn't really do much exercise as in training when I was there, because it was dangerous to sort of go for a run on my own, and we were sort of pretty busy most of the time, so I just enjoyed it. And then got back into training when I came back from there, but I really loved it, and I wanted to go back, so I ended up going back a couple of months later and studying nature conservation and working on a game reserve out there. So I was out there for another almost 2 years, and I didn't have the facilities to cycle or swim when I was out there, so I got right back into just purely running. I had quite a bit of success when I was out there. I got picked up by this club as well, and did like nationals and a few things. I was never amazing by any means, but I was having a bit of success and really enjoying it. So then got to Australia. I think I left there around my midway through the year of 20, and then try to get back into triathlon here, and just from my 21st birthday I had sort of a string of injuries, accidents and illness, so I never actually managed to compete in a full triathlon since I was 18. I did do some duathlons, I did some like pure open water swims, pure cycling, pure running, but I was never managed to have everything all together at the same time, unfortunately. And ended up, the injuries, by the way, weren't really hip related, although having said that, I did have anterior knee pain quite badly. I had it when I was 18, and then I had it again quite badly in my early 20s, and that took me out for about a year. And in retrospect, we do think that was all from my hips. I didn't. So I got back into running eventually, and I just decided I would stop triathlon because it was too. I'd had chronic fatigue, and it was too energy draining doing triathlon because of the amount of training. And I just always seemed to get injured from the combination of cycling and running. The cycling really just made my quads so tense and tight, and then it would always hurt when I ran. And again, that makes sense now because with the anteverted and dysplastic hips, like I'm so quad dominant, and so then going on the bike where it's a quad dominant activity, it was just exacerbating that. So yeah, got back into running from around my mid-20s, was just doing running, and started with just doing it sort of recreationally, and then just gradually building up as my body would allow, and I can't remember the exact timeline, but again, it was around my mid-20s I started getting it started as sort of hamstring neural tension, and I can't remember which leg it was on first, but it was on one leg and then it would be on the other, and it would keep swapping from side to side, and then that progressed to like neural tension down my whole leg, so into my calves as well. It wasn't there all the time, but it was there a lot of the time with running, and then a bit like if it flared up, it would be there sort of after running, and it just sort of, it was progressing, and then I started seeing this physio. So I did a pelvic and hip training course, professional development for physio, and I then started seeing a physio who was related to that training, and she did loads of pelvic stability stuff with me. I still wasn't diagnosed as hip dysplasia then. She just thought my pelvis was really rotated, and which it was, but not for the reason that we thought then. And so I just did heaps of hip stability, and it did help, but didn't like eradicate my symptoms, but it definitely improved them for a while at least, and I was able to like progress my running, and then at some point, I can't remember the exact year, probably in my late 20s, I started getting coaching, like individual coaching, and like started taking my running more seriously again, because I was sort of completely recovered from the chronic fatigue by then. Wasn't really, that injuries weren't really holding me back from training, so I got really serious, or started getting a lot more serious with my running, and was improving a lot. It was still having niggles and issues with the legs. Again, it was still mainly just that nerve tension, and then what was the next symptoms from there? It's sort of a bit of a jumble because it's all happened over such a long period of time. But I started getting, again, I might have the order wrong, but I know I was having a lot of pain in my right leg. It was sort of like proximal hamstring pain, so like right up the glute at the top of the hamstring and sort of right into my groin. That went on for ages. It wasn't proximal hamstring. We were trying to treat it like that for ages, and it just wasn't getting any better. And then what was next? I was getting, so this is where, sorry, it is a blur. So I had that, and then other symptoms I started to get, I can't remember the order, was a sort of weakness in my lower legs. So it felt like when I was walking, not like I had foot drop, but almost like I couldn't lift my leg properly. It was like so heavy, and I had to really, it was so much effort to lift my leg. And it was sort of like through the psoas and like through the calf and foot. It just felt not right at all. That went on, was still going on until I had my first surgery. And then I was getting, I started seeing a chiro who worked on like neuro programming, and he was doing loads of glute work on me, and I was doing loads of glute rehab, and that did help again for a while. And then I started getting loads of tightness through my left quad and ITB, and it was just like super tight. I was dry needling it and releasing it like a couple of times a week just to try and manage it, but it wasn't really managing it. It was just like just getting me by, but it would always just tighten right back up again. And throughout this time I was still competing. I did actually have a back procedure. I think that was in 2016. I had a nucleoplasty of L45 and 5S1 because I have protrusions there. They weren't, on the MRI, they weren't actually compressing my nerves at all, but again, hip dysplasia wasn't diagnosed. It's very commonly missed, as it was in me, and so we thought, well, it must be the disc protrusions causing all these sort of nervy symptoms. So I had that procedure and I had some time off after that. Didn't help. Didn't do anything, unsurprisingly, because it wasn't the cause of the symptoms. And I just tried getting back into it again. I did end up having quite a lot of success with my running. Somehow I was just training harder and harder, doing loads of rehab, loads of strength training, had my diet really dialed in, so I'd got pretty lean, and yeah, ended up having quite a bit of success, but I always felt, well, 9 times out of 10, I just felt like I wasn't getting, like I felt like I had so much more potential, because I always almost felt in the races that I was having these symptoms and I was inhibited, like particularly the leg weakness. Like I remember I did this race called 2 Bays Trail Run in the beginning of 2019, and there you start by going up Arthur's Seat, so it's all these steps, and I couldn't lift my leg up the steps. So I was literally having to like slow down and like limp up them. And uphill it was similar, but it was like more exacerbated up steps. I just had to try and make up time on the other bits. And when I was running uphill or up step, I just would lean so far forward, and I knew I was doing it, but I couldn't stop because it felt like I had no power and nothing to hold me up. And then sometimes I'd get like this really deep ache all the way down my legs, just like a nerve ache all through my legs, and that would slow me down as well. And then, trying to think, it was all just a combination of all that. I remember when I was running, like I just felt like I was getting so weak through my legs and my core that I was trying to hold myself up with like my neck and my upper body, and I was like really focusing on sort of pulling up towards the ceiling, and I was just having so much pain all in my head and my neck from like all the tension of trying to hold myself up. But if I relaxed that at all, like I just got slower, and I just felt like I couldn't lift my legs and I was falling like down into the road sort of thing. And then eventually, like by 2019, I still raced up until I was diagnosed in June 2019, but it got to the point where my leg was starting to give way. So I did this race called Nail Can Hill in May of 2019, and I was struggling running up the hills because I felt like I couldn't lift my legs, and then on the way downhill, my left leg literally was trying to buckle underneath me, and I couldn't stride out properly, or just like fully take the weight on it. I was trying to sort of like limp over onto my right leg, and then a bit later than that, or the next month, just before I got diagnosed, I was trying to run, and again hit what was down a mountain. I tried to run up Mount Feathertop and I sort of like limp ran up there, and then coming down my leg literally was giving way, my left leg. It was quite scary. And by that point I'd seen my sports doctor again. I had saw so many specialists, I had so many scans like throughout the 5 years leading up to my diagnosis, but I'd gone to my sports doc again and I was like, I'm sure there's something wrong with my left hip. Please can I have an MRI? He thought it was probably just a labral tear, and he's like, oh, like, it's probably just a labral tear, we're not going to do anything about it. Are you sure you're, like, he actually thought it was potentially psychological. Because I'd had a right hip MRI the year before, like 2018 I think, or even 2017, and they missed it in the MRI, which was the hip dysplasia and anteversion. Very frustrating. So yeah, obviously not the most skilled radiologist analysed that one. And anyway, so I persuaded my sports doc to give me an MRI on the left hip, and yeah, showed the hip dysplasia, and from there that's when I had all the proper scans, so the proper like pelvic x-rays, hip x-rays, CTs, and was meeting with surgeons. So we decided, so the left hip was the main issue at that point. I think because the left one was so bad, my right hip had, I wasn't really noticing it that much. I'd still have that weakness feeling with the leg, and I would still get like tightness in my calf, like this big sciatic pressure in my calf, but compared to the left it was nothing. So I just really focused on the left, and I kind of hoped that maybe if I fixed the left, the right one wouldn't be as bad. So we decided to do the PAO on the left, and my surgeon thought that he was considering doing the FO as well, so to derotate my femur. I was sort of pushing for him to do it in the same surgery, and he said he would if he thought it was necessary. And then after the surgery he said he thought that the PAO was enough. And initially I had a really good recovery, and then I just got these like progressive symptoms. It started like again all this tightness and locking up in my quad, and that just progressed until it was sort of like my whole quad was like, it felt like it was solid, and I lost all power through the leg, which I quantitatively measured because I was using the indoor, I bought a smart trainer for cycling, and when I was just starting on that, I was like measuring my watts the whole time, and my watts and speed literally halved. So obviously, like when I was in the first stages of surgery recovering, they weren't very high, but then when I got to the point about between 2 and 3 months post-op was probably like the peak, and I got a pretty good watt output for my FTP, I think it's called, and then it just went down and down and down and down, and like back to the point where I could hardly put any pressure through my left leg because it hurt so much and it was so weak. And then I started limping when I was walking, and even when I was just standing, like I couldn't put the weight on my leg, it was just buckling inwards. Yeah, and then we got some video footage of me walking and running, and my whole body was just so rotated. It was like my hip was sort of now, once the PAO had been done, my hip was like locked into its anteverted position. So I was just stuck in this like rotation. Yeah, so I ended up having the FO, as you know, and I have just been in recovery ever since that in September. Yeah, so there's a bit of my background, I'll insert some photos of some of my running and other sports and things I did in the past. And I should probably give you a bit of my hopes for the future. So I've had a lot of time to think about what I want in the future, and my priorities have probably changed throughout this whole ordeal. I still would love to run. Like, that's one of my biggest joys in life, and it's a really big goal of mine to get back to running. I'm naturally very competitive, so I think I am going to be pushing to be competing again, and I really want to do that. However, having gone through all this and been, particularly in the last 6 months, so debilitated and really not being able to do much of anything at all, I really truly feel at the moment that I will have a happy, fulfilled, satisfying life if I just have the capacity to go out and move as I wish. So if that means I can't compete, or I can compete but I'm never going to be at a high level again, that's fine. I just want to be able to go out and hike, ride my bike, go out running, do mountain running, but just for the pure enjoyment of it. And ultimately it'd be nice to be able to swim and surf again and stuff like that once I've got my shoulder fixed, and just basically be able to do things that I want to do strength training in the gym. Ultimate goal would be to get back to competitive running, and the hope is that I would be able to surpass my original PBs and results, because I hopefully won't be having all the limitations I was having before. That's going to be a bit down the track though, I think. So we'll see, and hopefully you can follow along on the journey, and I will keep updating, and yeah, let's see what life has in store for me.
So this is my first horse, Chester, just at a show jumping show, and Oscar, my second horse, did a lot of eventing with him. An open water swim race, or could have been in a triathlon. This was in a triathlon. And again, another one in transition. And cycling in, I think this was in a duathlon. And just with some triathlon trophy. This was in South Africa. Again, this was at Addo Elephant Park, I believe. And this lion we inserted a tracker in. He's just asleep. This was the reserve that I worked at, Penworn Country Lodge. Pretty beautiful. It was in the Drakensberg, and some of the dogs there. And running along the beach in somewhere in South Africa. My Achilles tenosynovectomy surgery, up in the Grampians somewhere on a hike. And this was a 3-day trek around Wilson's Prom. Running as a team in the Surf Coast Century. And rock climbing somewhere near Newcastle in New South Wales. Running on the O'Shanassy Aqueduct Trail in Warburton. And coming into the finish of the Ultra Trail Australia 22k. Coming down the finishing straight of an 800 metre race with trophies from Pinnacle Racing Queensland and the 10 mile cross country Vic Champs. At the finish of Puffing Billy, trophy podium from Two Bays trail race, 400 metre race, 1500 metre AV finals, the Lilo Derby at Warburton Trail Festival, that's a really fun one, the New Zealand Mountain Running Championships in 2019, Nail Can Hill Run here with Steve Monaghetti, and up Mount Feathertop. And then it was time for my PAO, and then the femoral osteotomy, and then this was at 12 weeks post-op where it was healed, and then the screw removal in late February 2021.